Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very nice opportunity for us to have a 30-minute block with the Deputy Minister who deals, as we mentioned, with the economic diplomacy. The story goes that last year he was pacing down the corridor and he said, "I can be friendly." And I ran into him and I said to him, "I'd like to see him interact." And he said, "I would if you invite me," and you didn't. So I did invite him, and here he is this year. So I'm so pleased to see him here. He sits on one specific chair, but I see him interact with many diplomats, go to overseas events, and just does a lot of work for the pro-export focus of the Czech Republic. I've seen a lot of good results. So I'll give him some space to give his remarks, and then there'll be a chance to ask questions. So please prepare your questions.
So, thank you, Alica, for first of all inviting me. It's always good to be with you and with all distinguished colleagues and ambassadors. So I'm happy to be here, because I have only 30 minutes, so I will make some notes which will provoke you a little bit maybe for the discussion, because the topic is very wide you are discussing today. I will touch upon the WTO, but not only, and I will try to add some thoughts about the value of economic diplomacy, as is the title of this 30 minutes. So my first remark is why the value of economic diplomacy. First, I think that we need to think more and more about the value of diplomacy as such, and not only economic diplomacy, because what is important is just to understand that this is from this building and my team here, it's a service to taxpayers, citizens of this country, or generally each country. And what is difficult on diplomacy as such is that we need to first of all do our homework to understand what is the national interest, how we can use bilateral and multilateral forum for selling the position of the Czech Republic, and put a team on that. So my first point is that this is value of economic diplomacy. It's more about generally about we have to think about diplomacy as such, what we can do, and as my colleagues usually says in other countries, the most difficult thing sometimes is to sell diplomacy at home. Because, I think you are understanding me when we are discussing what was agreed on European level or multinational level, that is also challenged by the different parties and different groups at home as well. Second point, diplomacy has changed very much. If you look on I found in some book a very simple division, and I am using that for the presenting these things. And to make a distinction, so to understand the distinctions between something which was called club diplomacy, and now we talk much more about the net diplomacy or networking diplomacy. Club diplomacy is a model which was described as a model for functioning by the end of the Second World War, let's say, generally. And number of factors is limited, structure is hierarchical, form is mainly written. We love to write the letters and memos and the information in printed word. The openness is limited, and the law, and everybody is making a speculation. What does it mean to be a diplomat? And we love to sign the memorandums. If you look what's happening after the Second World War, you will see that immediately you have much more players in the global business, generally, business in wide expression. How many countries are becoming independent, how many other, not only governmental, but also non-governmental players are in this topic, NGOs. What we are discussing is not only things which are bilateral, multilateral, but it's global, about global warming. NGOs are part of the discussion as well. And so we have a very much large number of players. The structure usually is a flat. The information are spread over the media immediately, 24 hours, 7 days a week. immediately, so diplomacy should react a different way. It's not about what's happening, but what's the policy of the country on that. And I think that the openness, thanks to this factor, is very high. And also the main goal is not to sign papers, but maybe to increase the flow of the things and relations or some other things. So that's my second point. Diplomacy is changing, and we have to be able to follow that difference. Why? Another thing is to discuss if the multilateralism is a deviation of the regional of domestic policy or the opposite. So I think that always is useful. I think that the values we recognize are global and are set in United Nations rules, which we respect. But also in multilateral forum, we have to reflect the national interests of each country. And we are building alliances and groups, and one of the important things is to be able to manage these things with the partners in which we can be important. For the Czech Republic, definitely we are a medium-sized country. We are very much supporting a multilateral system because we need rules. We are afraid of the world when the rule will be based only on the big countries. I think that we also should be a space for middle-sized countries, and every player should be there. We can promote better economically, it's quite clear. Domestic market is limited, so economy of scale is suggesting us to be able to deliver the things and products and services to the global world because, as I mentioned, economy of scale. And also it's important, and this is my last point, to consider more the openness of the world as a set of information, how to change the things at home. I think that we could be demanded by the global world to change to something which was called transmission rule of foreign trade. In all books, when I was at Prague School of Economics, I remember one of the books was describing the rule of foreign trade, and this rule is sometimes not mentioned so often. So we have to change because we need to understand the trends, and we have to find out what is the delivery made in the Czech Republic for either successful business or solving or helping to solve the challenges we are facing. I will not go into detail into WTO. We are not happy what's happening there. I just will be provoking that it's not only President Trump administration who is attacking WTO. I think that we didn't make our homework. I think that if you are aware of the fact of Sunderland's report was about, you understand that the demand for the changes of WTO are 20 years ago. And I think that we should reflect that the world has changed, and the institutions based on the system agreed after the Second World War is demanding the change because the countries has changed. Africa is playing much more important role than after the Second World War. Asia is very ambitious in this, and we should reflect to spread this institution into better arrangements. And we have to be open for the discussion how to change these things, aware of the fact that are important to guide us in the global governance. And discussing about how to change the thing is not doesn't mean that we don't want to have them. It is just demand for the discussion on these things to build a change because we need to agree on some basic principles. It's much more difficult than after the Second World War. For the Second World War in WTO, the issue was mainly tariffs. Everybody did understand that the tariffs are, something which is in fact finally bared by customers or buyers in international business. Now, then we discuss multilateral things and more non-tariff barriers, which are much more difficult to settle. But it's important to do that. Some people say that President Trump doesn't like WTO because he doesn't know WTO. And second group says that he doesn't like WTO because he does know what is WTO. I don't know where is the truth. It's not important. But we need to discuss that the worst thing we should be facing is a collapse of multilateral system in the global world. I'm afraid we are challenged by many aspects which are associated with something which is called also deglobalization. But in fact, I think that this is a task for us to be able to take the initiative to do that, both on European level and also on the bilateral level, and with the group of as we used to say in WTO, friends of WTO or the global business to do that. In the Czech Republic, we very much think about the sectors. When thinking about the opportunities, we are thinking in this ministry in which sector the Czech Republic should be successful, and I should elaborate a little bit. And I think that we need for that approach not only functioning organizations, but we need to deliver. And this is the last point I'd like to mention. Diplomacy is difficult to measure. Economic diplomacy is maybe more easy to measure. But the question which I am asking my colleagues is what is our delivery? How we explain what we are doing to the people and taxpayer in the country? And this is the challenge we have to face. So I will stop here because I am a friend of less narrative diplomacy, as you understand, and delivery, and otherwise I will be talking too much. So thank you very much.
I have some observations, so if you don't mind, I first ask and then I will open the floor. One of the observations I made that you were recently invited to speak in front of the Slovak ambassadors in Slovakia as a special guest. And considering these countries' division but similarities in some ways, what was something that you brought as an added niche maybe from the Czech system to Slovaks in your maybe remarks that you think works here and could work in Slovakia, maybe not, that you think is the added benefit? I'll just ask a set of questions and then I'll let you talk. Second one was, I did research recently on India, and what was very positive after dealing with Czech Republic past 6 years, I got a very positive feedback from business people on the missions that you organize to these places and help them set up feasibility studies. But in general, positive feedback in working with institutions, which hardly ever happens. What changed over the past maybe 5 years that you attribute to some of these good case studies, which are for me good to see, but has something happened that created this kind of positive interaction, collaboration between private sector, your ministry and Ministry of Industry maybe? My final question relates, you've just recently introduced ambassadors to China, South Korea, Australia, and Georgia and so forth. But I'm interested about these Asian placements because a lot of our friends, when I go overseas, are so curious why there is so much talk about Chinese investments in Czech Republic, but never about Korea or Japan or India. And now you've introduced Australia into this mix because if I understand, you're going on a sort of like a business mission there in October. What can these countries bring, and how can we maybe more talk about it domestically so people understand that there are investments, massive investments from Japan, from South Korea, but maybe not in media, they don't really appear as much. You know, how can we balance this kind of messaging, because a lot of work has been given towards these countries and interactions, but they seem to be invisible. So what do you think what can we actually offer to Australia? I just wonder, because I personally know, but common people would be like, you're going so far away.
Very comprehensive questions, there are many. So I will be short in answer, not to be boring you. First, it's It's my option for the future. So when I will finish at the ministry, I will be traveling around the world and selling what I was trying to do here. No, I'm joking, hopefully. That's economic diplomacy. It's a nice invitation because Slovakia is, the story is very short. Colleague State Secretary in Slovakia, Minister of Foreign Affairs, is my follower on the social media, and he was impressed by all the things we are putting to Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and so he is immediately recognized something is happening in the Czech Republic, and he was looking what is behind that, and they are thinking the same way, how to change the diplomacy I was trying to sell, how to be more focused on the services, how to deliver, and so it was a lecture for the ambassadors in Bratislava in June, when I was talking about the model which we decided to make 2014 in the Czech Republic, and my first suggestion was don't write the perfect strategy or 100% agreement with everybody, but just start. We need to start and instruct and talk with the embassies, with the businesses, and start to do the things. I do remember so many strategies which was perfect, but was not implemented. So aware of this fact, we were starting to work and to build that trust. This is association with the second question. Czech Republic, if you look on the global competitiveness of the Czech Republic, you will find one weak point, and this is the quality of the institutions. Companies and businesses and people are complaining in the Czech Republic about the institutions, that this is in wide term of expression. So how quickly the courts are making decisions, how the services are provided by the government institutions, sometimes they're complaining about the schools and quality of the education, and but the answer starts for me with really understanding that we are providing this as a service. It's not any privilege to be at foreign affairs. It's a service. So we have to understand, I was trying to say in the first part, to understand what clients are demanding to us. And in public sector, usually on many aspects, our major clients is another, bureaucrat. So mentally change that we are serving, we are trying to find out, that's something which is definitely helping us. So that's the philosophy or approach we decided, and I was happy to promote this model, and it's working. I hope it's working. About the opportunities, the second or third question. Yeah, you mentioned the missions, and missions have, we love to make sectors-oriented, focused missions, and generally we are talking not too much about countries, as I mentioned, we are talking about the sectors in which Czech Republic should be able to deliver something. When I am looking on my colleagues from Africa, we are making the access, you didn't mention Africa, and this is a priority for me as well, as you know, and the ambassadors know, so we are making an exercise where we should place some of the technologies made in the Czech Republic. Immediately you will find environmental, water, you will find health sector, and we are trying to find out a way how to promote some investment into countries. And based on that we are trying to promote our companies. What is important, we are looking for the new financial tools for our exports, not only Czech Export Bank and EGAP in the Czech Republic, but also development cooperation is essential for that. So we have now a system which is helping with guarantees for our investors to go to Africa, because it's a challenging market for many companies, and they are very focused on Europe, generally Czechs. So this is the way how we can promote these things abroad. Australia, and I didn't have a time, and I wasn't focused too much on these countries, because Australia and New Zealand was out of the everyday business, unfortunately, but they play more and more important role for my understanding, our understanding in Asia and Europe-Asia relations, and this is an important player to understand about the business we can do that. So I think that one of the secrets which I can announce is we will open the representation of medical medical company called Linet in Australia. So they opened a branch. So one of the important sectors in which we will operate in Australia and also New Zealand is health and health equipment for the hospitals. And this is one sector in which we consider to be competitive. And based on that, we also have companies interested in the machine and car industry and also aviation industry, small aircraft. So there's a couple of solutions from the Czech Republic based on this exercise we're trying to promote. And politically is also important because, as I mentioned, we need to bring more dialogue with Europe from different parts of the world, including this important player, Australia and New Zealand in the global trade, generally supporting also the liberalization of the global business.
Thank you so much. Questions from the audience? We've got Joe Syracuse, actually comes from Melbourne.
I'm from the Royal Melbourne.
Just press.
Okay. I'm from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Melbourne, Australia. Thank you, Minister, for your comments. I want to make two small comments, and then I'm going to ask you two questions. Number one, I don't think Donald Trump is going to be much of a problem. He doesn't think anything about Europe or trade that Richard Nixon didn't think. I wrote a 300-page book on Nixon and Europe, and he didn't like Europe either. He didn't like trade policies. But, you know, it turns out that Nixon, like Trump, doesn't mean badly. Most of the time, he means nothing at all. So you don't have to worry about that. Number two, when America had a foreign economic dimension to its policies after World War II. And I'm talking about President Truman and the Truman Doctrine. I'm talking about General Marshall and the Marshall Aid Program. This was sold to the American people who were not Santa Claus. It was sold to hard-minded business people in America as enlightened self-interest. It is in our interest to do these things as much as it is elsewhere. So that's how I sell things to people. It's enlightened self-interest. This is a phrase that has fallen out of use in the United States in the past 20 years. But it certainly held up the American side of the end of Moscow-dominated communism. There was an enlightened self-interest as well as a natural interest too. Now my two questions for you is how do you distinguish between economic diplomacy and Czech foreign aid? And what do you think of the Belt and Road and its debt diplomacy implications?
Thank you, Joe. Just please,
Okay.
Any questions so I can collect a set? Oh, please. That's a comment from Norway.
Yes, I'm Arne Melchior from the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. I will be in the next panel, but since you're on the podium, let me ask a very brief question. What are the prospects for the so-called TTIP light? TTIP, the transatlantic, a new trade agreement with the USA.
Yes, hello, Teresa Novotná. I'm academic based in Berlin, but I'm Czech and I also collaborate here with Europeum. Following on your question on TTIP Light, it looks like that, WTO has decided in the case of Airbus against the EU, and it looks like that President Trump will want to put some tariffs on the EU following that decision. So what do you think that the EU should do, and what the Czech Republic would like the EU to do? Thank you.
I will try. And so the first question was about relations between Czech foreign aid and business and economic diplomacy and trade. Yeah. So I will be quite brief. So first of all, consensus on the Czech side is to increase each year the volume of the money we are putting into the development cooperation, foreign aid. We are not fulfilling the obligation 0.7 or 0.3. It is less because the budget is not allowing that. But we are adding in Czech crowns 60, 70, 100, it depends on the year, million Czech crowns yearly more on development cooperation. Because we are a middle-sized country, we are trying to be smart. So we are working with private sector, with NGOs to find out the synergy on that, nothing new, and we are trying to be focused on some priority sectors. On the other side, I'm telling each embassy in developing country has to have development diplomacy as well. So we have some small projects and helping the schools and so. But we selected some priority markets or priority countries for development cooperation. For example, in Africa, it's Zimbabwe and Ethiopia. In Asia, it's Bangladesh, it's Burma, it's Cambodia, and also Balkan countries are important for us because we are trying to help them to access EU and the knowledge of the transformation of the Czech economy into EU full membership is maybe something we can share. So we are trying to be focused. Third point, putting together the private and NGOs, private business and NGOs. It's challenging things because I remember discussion 5 years ago was non-governmental organization and NGOs was saying this is our business and private business is because of profit. This is the different values. We cannot do things together. This is what I was feeling the discussion in the Czech Republic 7-10 years ago. Now we are trying technically to put together the common projects. Easy to say, difficult to do, but helping with equipment of the hospital should go together with the training of the staff, and this should be a business for NGOs as well. So we are trying to integrate the projects to cooperate together more. That's why I mentioned the guarantee scheme also for some investment into Africa. So this is a important part of our foreign policy. It's not only responsibility, and we are trying to be smart. Development aid or development cooperation for the Czech Republic is not trade-off. It's not, there is a budget for you and we don't want to see refugees in Europe or people coming to Europe. That's not the foreign policy of the Czech Republic, but we would like to tackle the reason why people in Africa, from Africa are leaving, to help to build prosperity and stability in the regions. And we are preparing now the new program for the government, which will be focusing also especially on the African countries, which add to the things I mentioned also another element, so we are trying to be more active there. Annual budget is expected to be 100 million Czech crowns, and we will hopefully start next year, and we will announce it, I hope, next month. So that's generally the point of that. TTIP, and I will touch upon. I remember Airbus-Boeing disputes is very, very long. I remember when I was working on trade policy, and I left the Ministry of Industry and Trade responsible for that about 2011. I remember discussion about dumpings, disputes, and between who is more subsidizing the aircraft production in the world. So this is nothing new. I think that this is a part of the fight which is behind this sector between Europe and US. So it's a long story. It's nothing new. I think that the way how we will settle will show how we can be able to cooperate in the future. TTIP for us is important, not only for the Czech Republic, but for the EU as such. I think one single argument, isn't stupid that we have free trade agreements with many other countries in the world and not with transatlantic close alliance like US. So my argument should start, if we are able to liberalize the business with many countries from outside Europe, we should start maybe to build also the trust and put down the barriers to invest and to do business between Europe and United States. Second point, there's many non-tariff barriers which are costly for the business on both sides. So pragmatically, we can help that. So we are advocating for that. Maybe it's not easy now to find out the consensus on that. I think that the sensitive sectors are in each free trade agreements, but I think that TTIP should not only help in business, but what for me is important, will show you the way how to trust help to build a trust discuss between Europe and US in the global governance or global issue, if you would like, overcoming these sensitivities we have on both sides on that. So we have to find out a way how to demand it maybe more by users, businesses, to understand that if we will be able to lift out barriers, it will be much more more profit and investment from both sides. It will be profitable. But it's easy to say, not easy to do always. But we strongly believe that that in the future it will be possible on the European side to come back on that issue and move for that. Particularly for the Czech, when there are some studies about TTIP and the Czech economy, so I think that we should, on one side, more make a profit from in some sectors in which we are active in the United States. You will find, by the way, lots of couple of good companies from the Czech Republic investing in US market. And generally, what is important, if you look on the trade statistics, you will find interesting things that generally the export from Czech Republic to US is with higher added value than in average to EU or other markets. Maybe because of distance, but we are proud that the added value is there in business from the Czech Republic to the North American market. So that's just, I'm touching the answers to your question because it's topic for the whole afternoon. So sorry if I skipped something which maybe is missing in my answers.
Well, I would like to thank you because I think you've been generous. I'm sorry, but we have to move forward. We have 3 panels waiting to take place. One is on Africa, which, of course, I did not overlook. Just the question was about Asia, but I want to thank you for your remarks and also for giving us time to answer questions. I think it's important to have this kind of discussion, and we look forward to more.
One sentence,
yeah, of course.
One sentence. If let's agree if something is demanded from ministry or from my team, so through Alica, please let's be in contact, and I will be more than happy if you will be demanding something from on the topic from Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'm ready to be in touch with you on that. Thank you, and I wish you a good stay in Prague if you are from outside of Prague, and a good stay here. And thank you very much for organizing such a pleasant meeting here.